I'm Jen Shaw. We spend our days helping employers sort through messy workplace situations, often in real time and often with a lot on the line. On this podcast, we'll walk through those issues, what's coming up, what actually matters, where employers get into trouble, and what to do next. No theory, just practical guidance you can use. Hello, everybody. Happy June 17th. I'm coming to you from fabulous Orlando, Florida. I'm here at the SHRM conference. I get to speak with two amazing people. In fact, I'm speaking today. Joe and I are going to be talking about everything in California that is new and next and very expensive. So new laws, new regs, current trends, what's costing so much and how you can stay out of court. And then I'm going to be talking with Dr. Dennis Davis, who is an amazing guy. I'm sure a lot of you know him. He is an expert in psychology, and I don't even know how to explain what he's an expert in. He's just an expert in workplace thought processes and all kinds of stuff. Anyway, he's also a workplace violence prevention expert, and he and I are going to do a presentation later on this afternoon about how to deal with both the legal sides of workplace violence prevention and then the emotional, psychological sides of it. So it's going to be great. And if you ever get a chance to see either Joe Beachboard or Dr. Dennis Davis, they are amazing. Okay, so what are we talking about here today? Politics. Okay, guys, it is crazy out there. This is not a political discussion. I don't care who you voted for president. I don't care if you like the glistening tower on the Capitol Mall that is being built or that the ballroom is being redesigned or whatever's going on. That's not what this is about. This is about work and what you do at work when people want to talk about politics or when they want to go to an event like a demonstration or something that's going on. And the thing is, in California, this is particularly tricky because you can maintain workplace standards as an employer, and of course you should and you must, but you have to be careful about things like political activity, voting rights, off-duty conduct, protected speech, retaliation, discrimination. This all becomes a messy soup of liability, okay? And then you're trying to sort it out. So, a couple things. First of all, politics, the old adage, don't talk about politics or religion at family dinners or whatever. Yeah, politics really get people going. And you got to be careful about that. So if you're a manager or a supervisor or a leader or an owner, you don't want to be out there talking about your beliefs. You don't want people to feel like maybe they have to believe the way you believe or they're not going to have a future in the organization. So one day I wore this t-shirt to work that was very reflective of my political views. And luckily, Ronnie Stover, our amazing chief operating officer, pulled me aside and said, "Hey, Jen, do you think that's appropriate to wear to work today?" By the way, it didn't have any bad words or anything on it. It was talking about immigration. And it said that immigrants, no, I'm not even going to say what it said. So anyway, by the way, my t-shirt did not say anything inappropriate. Okay. So these political affiliations can be very hot issues. Now, of course, we want productivity. We're hiring people to do their job. We want them to do their jobs. We want them to be professional. And employees have this belief, many of them, that they have First Amendment rights. Okay, well, guess what? If you don't work for the government, you don't have a First Amendment right. But in California, we have a constitution that does provide for freedom of speech and freedom of religion and freedom of association. So you guys, this topic matters for a couple of really important reasons. First of all, we just had a vote earlier this month. I'm not even sure that they've tallied all of the results yet. California is really wonky when it comes to that. And I like going to the polls. Okay, I want to go in there. I like them to check my address. I want to make sure that I always do the paper ballot. I don't want to do the punch screen thing. I like to watch it go in the box. I don't know. My mom used to take us when we were kids. She likes to be first in line at the ballot box to make sure there's nothing in the ballot box when she is the number one voter, first in line. And so voting matters, right? But the problem is election cycles, as we're already seeing, really increase workplace tension. Political discussions can turn personal very, very quickly. And I find myself sometimes guilty of this, so to be really careful. Social media activity about politics can really spill into the workplace. Managers, supervisors, leaders, we're people too, and we may react emotionally to political issues or views or perspectives that we disagree with. Also, customers, clients, students, patients, members of the public, they can get involved. And in California, we've got very specific protections. So first of all, for voting, hopefully in all of your workplaces around June 2nd, when we had the election recently, 10 days before, there should have been a notice posted in your workplace that told you that if you could not find time to vote during your non-work hours, you could take 2 hours off with paid time to vote. Now, at least in Sacramento, where I voted, we had 4 days of open polling places, and you could always submit your ballot by mail. So there's a lot of different options you have, but the law hasn't really caught up to all of those options. And I don't really remember when we started getting to vote before Election Day, but it's been a couple of years. So you have to post that notice. You also have to make sure that nobody is discouraging employees from voting or encouraging them to vote or asking them who they voted for. Political activity is, of course, broader than voting. We have protections against employers who want to prevent employees from attending rallies or protests or demonstrations. Your employer cannot require you to join a particular party, or, well, if you want to work here, you have to be a member of this political party. So let's think about that for a second. Let's say the California Peace and Freedom Party is hiring a new HR director. Okay? And the question is, do they get to ask that the candidates for that role what their political beliefs are? And the answer is no, because the HR director's political beliefs have nothing to do with them facilitating HR, okay? Now, if they were applying to be director of outreach for the Peace and Freedom Party, then it would matter, right? Or if they were applying to be the speechwriter for the candidates for the Peace and Freedom Party, that would matter. But the HR director doesn't make any difference. So be careful that we're not requiring candidates or employees to be part of a particular group or share a particular perspective in order to get a job with us. Now, you also can't retaliate against someone because of political activity. So for me personally, one of the most memorable days I've had in the last several years is when the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade. And that was the U.S. Supreme Court decision from 1973 that gave women the right to seek an abortion under appropriate circumstances. It was never, by the way, you can have an abortion whenever you want one, but there were certainly limitations, and the Supreme Court overturned that in the decision just a few years ago. What was interesting to me is how people reacted to that decision. All right, I'm in a law firm, but and I went back and looked today, I had 6 calls from clients that day saying that they had very significant issues in their workplace because their employees were talking about the court's decision, and there was a lot of dispute. There was a lot of dissension about whether the court made the right decision or whether they didn't. And in my mind, public discourse is so important, people being able to talk about issues that are important to them, but not necessarily at work, right? I'm not going to ban political discussion because I think that encourages people to do it more, but I really try to discourage it. Because the problem is, you don't really know when to draw the line. You don't know when to stop. And that was a very hard day for me. I think not only because I'm a woman and I feel like that's important, but I had studied a lot in law school about constitutional law. I took an advanced constitutional law class. I wrote a comment about the protections for abortion under different amendments and why maybe that was a better way for the court to go instead of relying on this sort of the penumbras of the right to privacy, which is kind of amorphous, which is one of the reasons why the case got overturned. Anyway, what I want you to understand here is people had very emotional reactions. And I had those 6 clients who called with a lot of issues, and there was a lot going on that day. And it made me realize that sometimes we should treat the workplace like a refuge, right? I don't need to hear everybody's favorite music. Although I will tell you the other day, it was funny. I got to the office really early. I came in and I was blasting Taylor Swift, okay, who's one of my favorite. I don't know. She's my favorite, one of my favorite artists. I don't even call her a recording artist because I think her lyrics are like poetry, a lot of them. And I hope you've heard the new Toy Story single. I think it's super good. Anyway, I'm blasting the music and one of our lawyers comes in and says, "Wow, Jen, so I guess you're a Swiftie." And I was like, "Ooh, okay, I guess I need to be," I said, "Yeah, I am. But don't worry, I'm going to turn it off. I didn't know you were here." I mean, I didn't need to be blasting music. Honestly, it was 6:30 in the morning. I didn't think anybody was here. So you got to think about that, right? Sometimes it's better to let the workplace be a place where we don't listen to our favorite music and we don't talk about politics and we don't share the protests we're going to go to on Saturday. And I think if we do that, particularly if our leaders can really limit their comments on political views, who they've donated to, campaign activity, that kind of thing, then we can focus on the things that employers legitimately can control, right? Like, hey, when you're working, don't talk about politics. Don't get distracted by what else is going on here. And don't use that time to proselytize for your favorite candidate. Don't do it in a work area. You want to do it on your break or your meal period, fine. But you know what? We got to focus on getting the work done here. Think about how these sorts of disputes can actually violate your workplace violence prevention policy. You should all be making sure that you're meeting your obligations in California under our Cal OSHA regulation about workplace violence prevention. Remember, you have to have a policy and you have to do training and you have to record incidents in your log. If you have two employees or a group yelling and screaming at each other about politics, that may very well need to be reported in your log. What about dress and uniform standards? Can you say no t-shirts with a logo? Yeah, you can, right? Now, you can't say you can have t-shirts with a logo as long as they have the Peace and Freedom Party on it. Not if they're Democrat or Republican or Libertarian. Can't do that. All of your messages in the workplace have to be content neutral. And remember, we have labor code provisions. I wrote an article on this recently. There's a blog on it. We have labor code provisions. We have labor code section 96K, which allows employees to engage in lawful outside activities, even if you don't like what they're doing as the employer. We have 1101, 1102 of the labor code that provide protection for employees who want to express their political beliefs and their practices. When you have a disruption to customer operations or client operations or patient satisfaction, you can say, hey, look, this is not okay, right? We need to focus on getting the job done and limit this discourse. Now, one of the things I want you to really think about is what can you do as an employer to avoid trouble in this area? I mean, there's so much to talk about here. We could go on for 45 minutes or an hour or 2 hours easily. But I want you to keep a couple of things in mind, and I think this will help you. First of all, focus on conduct and not viewpoint. Every rule you have, every policy you have has to be what we call viewpoint neutral, that you are going to apply the same rule to everybody, and you're going to do it consistently. You're going to train your leaders. Listen, don't get into a political debate. Don't ask people, oh, you don't need time off to vote? Aren't you going to vote? Don't you know that you should be voting? We don't want them having any of that discussion. You want to also train your leaders to respond quickly when a discussion about politics or party affiliations or an initiative that's on the ballot starts to turn discriminatory or harassing or becomes abusive conduct or bullying. Make sure that you are careful about disciplining anyone for their social media posts. If they own their social media posts by saying, hey, these are my views, and they don't even talk about who they work for or what they do for a career, you're going to be hard pressed to do anything about things they say on social media unless they are statements threatening violence, that sort of thing. Here's the deal. You can absolutely maintain professionalism and you can prevent disruption of your workplace if you do not regulate political views or affiliations, and instead you focus on implementing neutral workplace rules, consistently enforcing those rules, and promptly responding when everything starts to go south. I don't know what's going to happen between now and November. I really don't. We've got some time, And then we're going to have a whole bunch of time before the next presidential election. I don't know if any of this is going to calm down anytime soon. So again, I love the idea of workplace as a refuge. We're just not going to talk about that stuff. You don't have to necessarily have a policy or procedure about every issue that can come up. You can focus on respect and professionalism and behaving appropriately at work. If you do that, you should be fine. Everybody, thanks for joining me here today. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Shaw Law Group, we solve workplace problems. Real-world guidance for real workplace decisions. The Workplace Wake Up podcast is produced for general educational and informational purposes only. The views expressed are those of the speakers and do not constitute legal advice or create an attorney-client relationship. The law is complex and constantly changing. Therefore, you should contact an employment lawyer in your jurisdiction for advice regarding your specific situation.